Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe, and I'm a weapon of mass instruction still. It is now, 23:35 Eastern Standard Time, June 28th, 2012. And I know my last video just uploaded like literally 2-3 hours ago. But I had to put this out there. I'm a little worried now. And if you'll recall, was it yesterday, the day before? A couple days ago, I think it was. I talked about how a recruiter was talking to me. And how he seemed pretty keen on getting me into the military again. Well, I jumped at the chance, and I'm not saying that I shouldn't have or anything like that. Honestly, I felt the most comfortable in the Marines, and being in the Army would be probably not that much different. And I know that, in all honesty, Alexis is in probably one of the safest areas she could be in. And I've already come to realize that her mother, however great her intentions are, is still one of the sheep. So she'll most likely do exactly what the government tells her to, at all times, without question. Even if it means for the quote-unquote better good, the greater good, even if she doesn't like it very much. Hey, but you know what? That's the definition of discipline. Discipline is the instant willing obedience to all orders, respect for authority, self-reliance, and teamwork. At least that was the boot camp definition of discipline that I was given. And obviously I retained. But it's not the end-all be-all. At some point, no matter what one's chosen career path might happen to be, there will come a point where they must choose whether to follow an order they know to be unlawful, to be unconstitutional, or whether to go against said order and do what they know is the right thing to do, and potentially be branded a traitor for it. So, based on my own thought processes and especially on feedback from you guys, thank you. Come to a couple of conclusions. Now, during the course of talking to my recruiter, I was already gung-ho about getting back in. For one thing, easy for most to understand, the benefits are nice, especially in the Army. See my taxpayers' dollars at work. Oh, and by the way, in the military, you do get taxed if you're not on deployment. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're stateside, even if you're undergoing training, you still get taxed. If you're in country, in a combat zone, then you don't get taxed. I wonder how that plays out nowadays, now that they've all but said that the battlefield is now at home. And that's the thing, too. That's another reason why I jumped on board. Because I want the guys in the military to do the right thing. But that's obviously not a guarantee. What with all these, everything going on with, between the economy sucking so hardcore, along with the fact that now, quote-unquote, undocumented immigration is now being enforced, as opposed to, the opposite, which is what's supposed to happen. Now we're looking at a good influx of, I'm going to go out and say it, illegal immigrants in the military looking to get their green card. Now, probably some of them, maybe even most of them, truly believe in what this country stands for, but there is definitely going to be at least a small cadre of them from whatever respective country they hail from who just don't give a fuck. And those would be the ones that are, claiming tax returns as undocumented immigrants and claiming, something like 11 dependents on their return forms, even though said dependents live in fucking wherever. But that's besides the point. Fact is, there's still a good percentage of people in the military who are still sheep, although I imagine the percentage of awakened people are higher in the military in general. I'd say especially in the Marine Corps. I can vouch for us when I say we took our oath of enlistment very seriously. Very, very seriously. The part about obeying all orders lawful, and especially the part about upholding and defending the Constitution of the United States of America. The country, not the corporation, that is. More agua. Yes. But also there's a good percentage of them who just don't give a fuck. Who joined up so they can see shit get blown up, so they can put lead down range and have a blast. Now, don't get me wrong. Blowing shit up was pretty fun. Putting lead down range is pretty fun. But it's very important to know who your target is, what they represent. If they're shooting at you, awesome. They're an enemy. Shoot back. However, pause for effect. If they're not shooting at you, possibly not an enemy. Therefore, it would be prudent to ensure that your target is who or what you think he or she is before you pull that trigger, press that trigger, squeeze that trigger, click that clacker, whatever your chosen weapon is. And that's part of it. I want, that the slot that I'm going to fill. I say going to because it looks to me like there's something going on behind the scenes that's pushing this through. Because a couple of years ago when I tried to apply, it didn't work out. And the guy never called me back. Said, "Oh, thanks, but no thanks. Services are not required at this time." But I would rather that slot that's filled be me, being one who's aware of some of the shit that's going on, if not all of it. Definitely not all of it. Yeah, definitely, yeah. And who is a good person. I believe I am morally straight. Just like the Boy Scout said, morally straight. Meaning, you will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. And that was quoted from West Point, Army Officer Academy. And they both hold true. Point being, we need people in the military who are willing to squeeze the trigger when the time is right. But we also need people who are willing to do the right thing, at whatever the cost to themselves, or even their families if need be. Because I think that point in time is coming quick too. And I discussed this with a couple of friends of mine. When powers that be, the Order, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, they're going to come out as ruthless as we all know them to be, And they will try to find us truthers, those who are awake, either publicly or privately dissenting against what we see going on and what we don't approve of, which is our God-given right as citizens of this country to do. We have the right to dissent. We have the right to question our political authority. You know, we have the right to question our military authority as citizens of the United States. We have the right to question, to voice our opinions, to make it heard. We have the right to bear arms. We have the right to due process, a speedy trial by a lawful court. We have the right against unlawful search and seizure, against incrimination of self. You know, we have the right by the court system to be innocent until proven guilty. All of that. We have the right to representation for our taxation. All of it. Those are our rights. We need to be willing to stand up for our rights. You know, if you want some motivation on that, listen to some Disturbed on their album 10,000 Fists. It's all about what's about to happen this year, what we can see going on behind the scenes. But anyway, back to the story as it stands. I don't know how widespread this occurrence is, but certain documents that they needed to see from me, I don't have anymore. Namely because that other recruiter I talked to ended up keeping them. I never thought of taking them back, and by the time I realized it, boom, couldn't remember his name. You know, he was probably gone from that post already. And a process that is normally supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks to accomplish, to procure this specific document, specifically my DD-214, which basically tells them how I served my time in the service, in the military, prior to now. Whether I got out honorably, other than honorably, dishonorably, what my re-enlistment code is, basically tells them whether or not I can re-enlist, if so, what are my options, all that stuff. I can sing until the cows come home all day long that I, had an honorable discharge, re-enlistment code RE1 Alpha, which means basically that technically I could get in again, no problems, no questions asked really. And they'd say, okay, here's the paper to sign, welcome back. But again, that document, it would take normally 6 to 8 weeks to procure. And these guys are basically going straight up through the chain of command to get it by this Monday. This is fucking unheard of, except in matters affecting national defense or national security in the immediate future, for the most part. I would say it's downright ludicrous, if not for the fact that I am one of those citizens who chooses to exercise my right to dissent, my right to free speech, my right to bear arms, who is willing to do what is necessary to procure and to secure those rights for myself and for my fellow citizens, who's willing to do it before, willing to do it now, even more so than ever. So that's the part that kind of gets me a little bit nervous about this whole process. A little bit, worried, concerned, frightened, scared, however you want to word it. They want me back bad, all of a sudden. The call came to me, not the other way around. For all intents and purposes, I thought there was no chance in hell that I would get back in. But they're saying that they're going to make it happen. again, this is awesome for me. This is, you know, like my ex has been saying for a long time now, this is where I belong. And she's right. You know, I was born for this. I need that level of structure surrounding me in order to function as a human being. As crazy as that sounds, call it genetics, call it environment, nurture versus nature, whatever you want to call it, that's me. You know? And I'm pretty happy about that. But again, at the same time, it's kind of an odd thing to see happen in my own personal life. So we'll see how tomorrow goes. I'm going to be filling out more paperwork. You know, Monday, should wrap up the paperwork, submit the package about then. And from what I gather, they're pushing for a possible ship out date of, you know, sometime around next week. Like, crazy. When I went in the first time, well, they told me first off, all the slots were filled up for most MOSs. I was like, all right, that's cool. I want infantry. And they're like, are you nuts? I was like, yeah, no. I want infantry. That's what I wanted since I was a kid. Second to being a fighter pilot, I wanted to be where the action is. I wanted to be the one actually physically on the ground fighting for my country's rights. More agua. H2O. Dihydrogen oxide. Yeah, I'll let you go. It's a legal passing zone. We're running on 20 minutes again, and I apologize. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? From now on, I'm going to make these videos lower resolution. So after this video, I'm going to try to remember that. But hopefully that'll allow you guys to see it without too much buffering. I know that's always been an issue with me. Except when I'm doing a video involving the whiteboard. But here's the thing, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that anytime in the near future. So that's also another thing I want you guys to know. If I disappear off the face of the earth, well, that's still probably bad news. I'll try to give you guys a heads up before I ship out. That way you'll know not to freak out and scream that the sky is falling. All the way up until that point, if I'm not making videos, I'm going to be checking out videos, if possible, at least one a day, probably. Sending some comments and likes and stuff like that. And I know at least some of you guys are following that stuff, so thank you. It's not like a popularity contest thing, it's mainly, I'm your canary, people. You know what I mean? We're all in the mine shaft together, we're slugging away at this job. If I go down first, you guys know it's time to head for the hills. You know what I'm saying? A quote comes to mind, comes from a variety of places. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Now, it seems to me that the powers that be, I'm not saying in the military, because there's a good chance that even at the higher ranks of the military, most of those people are still good people. Still trying to fight to do the right thing. But I'm talking about above the military level. Above all our pay grades. People up in that high hallowed halls are afraid of us. The awake, the aware, the truthers, those that choose to voice their dissent. They're especially afraid of those of us who know how to handle a firearm and know military tactics. They're afraid of those of us who know how to apply said tactics in defense of our free nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So, for better or for worse, I was married to the military before, got my divorce, On my second wife now. Fucked up analogy, but you know what? That's the truth, and I love it. And going back into the belly of the beast, people. And I don't want you to start getting the idea that this sounds glorious. There's truly no glory involved in the potential for seeing people you like and love potentially die in front of you. There's no glory involved in squeezing the trigger on another human being. I have not yet had that occasion where I found it necessary to take a human life, but I know of several instances when I was prepared to do so, and by God, I would have squeezed that trigger when the time came, but it never did. There is no glory in that. When it comes down to it, the only things that I was thinking about at those moments in time, and again, this was not an actual combat situation, but this was, for example, at one point I was designated the squad marksman, and I was given the assignment of keeping my sights on every individual that was being searched through an individual checkpoint. My orders were that any time I felt that they were threatening myself or any of my squad mates with lethal force, I was authorized to fire. Shoot to kill, never to warn. Always to kill. Never shoot to injure, unless you absolutely have to take a prisoner or a detainee. Reason why? Well, some would argue it would be better to shoot to injure so that you take 3 enemies out of the combat zone. The one that you injured, plus 2 that are going to carry him off the field. But in the end, well, better to not have to face that individual enemy again another day. And I realized the truth of warfare too. You know, for everybody who's been raised on video games and movies, Call of Duty, Black Hawk Down, fuck, all that shit, where you've got a clear-cut good guy, clear-cut bad guy, sometimes gray areas, but usually not so much. You know, war, when it boils down to it, to the microcosm of things, it boils down to you versus the other sorry son of a bitch who's about to die for his country. That's what it comes down to, people. It'll be a sad day when both sides think they're fighting for the same country. It happened already in our country one time. It's very plausible that it'll happen again. Possibly again after that. Because we are still the freest nation on earth. I want you to take hope in that. As sorry as the state seems right now, as many dangers as we see lurking in the shadows, potentially frightening us. You know, all these things that may or may not come to pass. I want you all to take hope in that. The fact that to the rest of the world, our country still represents economic freedom, personal freedom at all levels, religious freedom, political freedom, military freedom. Excuse me. How many times did we issue the draft as a nation? Not all that much compared to our history as a whole. The only time I actually recall it from the history books was this century. This previous century. Still have trouble wrapping my mind around the whole 21st century shit. You know where I'm coming from here. Whether we like it or not, the eyes of the world are on us. Some of our leaders and some of our men and women not giving us the best track record so far. It is up to the good people of the nation to do what is right. As ugly as it might be, as inglorious as it might be, as dishonorable as it might feel. Because I'll tell you what, every single one of those people that I had my sights pointed at, weapon off a safe, finger hovering over the trigger, ready to fire in an instant before he had a chance to draw a bead on any of my buddies, or pull the button, the dead man switch out of his pocket or whatever he had. Not a single one of them actually looked like an enemy combatant. I'm thankful I made the right choice in each and every one of those cases. Decided not to squeeze the trigger, knowing that I did not yet see positive identification of an enemy combatant. That's just a bit of a microcosm, talking about how, even in the big picture, it boils down to stuff like that. Take what happened at the end of World War II when we dropped both of those atomic bombs. Was it for the greater good? I remember that in high school we had a mock trial, or I should say a debate, based on that. Did America have the right to drop those atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, however you prefer to pronounce it? Or was it an inhumane thing to do? Well, that was terrorism. Cut and dry. Refer back to my episode about terrorism. We bombed 2 cities full of civilians, most of whom would not have been enemy combatants in the case of an invasion. The problem being, which outweighs the other? Several 100,000 civilians, or over 1 million, both civilians and military personnel combined, in a straight-up military engagement? Which one is right? Which one is wrong? I am personally of the opinion, and unfortunately I had to argue for the other side, I am personally of the opinion that dropping the atomic bomb was the wrong thing to do. Take the aftermath. Russia got their nukes. Several other countries following us in Russia all got nukes. For a good long while, and still today, live under the threat of nuclear Armageddon. It could happen. And by some accounts, it probably will happen. Just as I was arguing with somebody today, shouldn't say arguing, but defending my point on a specific topic, and this is my last little thing to go on about, and then I'm signing off for tonight. But I was having a discussion, shall we say, with an individual on YouTube. In this case, talking about the Russian troops on American soil. And his argument was, at no time was there ever the threat of Russian troops actually taking part in a military engagement on American soil, that the total number of Russian troops on American soil was no more than 20. and that they were there mainly for PR, public relations purposes. That very well might have been the case. But my argument was this. A, that sending 20 Spetsnaz soldiers to America for the first time ever, might I add, is a waste of resources if not done for specific reasons. PR, well, they waste money all the time on PR. And they do it to give certain groups of people a good image, whether it's deserved or not. Call it propaganda, if you will. That's the fact on that. But in the case of straight up training purposes, 20 guys is an absolute waste. It's never done like that. It's always a company level or above, like I've discussed previously. However, 20 personnel perfectly fits the advance party of a battalion-sized unit preparing to deploy. So, regardless of whatever the mainstream media actually reported, or how many sources in the mainstream media reported this, the fact remains that at least 20 soldiers of Russian nationality were on American soil. Whether it was 20 or 200, who really knows? However, multiple sources have confirmed that it was more than 20. You know. So, it would behoove us, I hate that word, but it would behoove us to be as prepared as possible for the worst case possible scenario. Within reason. Now, obviously, if you have, $3,000 in debt on credit card bills that you're, diligently paying off, but, you have no real assets to your name, it would stand to reason that it would be just downright ridiculous to build yourself a doomsday bunker. But there are some out there who are awake enough to realize that something may actually occur and are doing just that. There's others that are drawing out ridiculous loans to do just that. There are people that are doing their own part in their own way to prepare for the worst case possible scenario. And I suggest you do the same. At the very least, stock up on supplies in your home if you don't plan on going anywhere. Food, water, medicines, even the basics. Ammo, guns. Build yourself a bug-out bag if you see yourself possibly leaving the place where you live or work if the shit hits the fan. I recommend that for everybody. Bug-out bag, basic survival gear. 3 days worth of food, 3 days worth of water, a first aid kit, poncho, warm weather gear if you need it, extra change of clothes, extra socks beyond that, extra pair of underwear if possible, other supplies as needed. Fighting knife would be good, e-tool like I have maybe, a roll of toilet paper or two if you can fit it, paracord or 550 cord. You could get 100 feet of that, and that bundles up into basically it wraps up into less than 6 inches long by 3 inches wide, and it's soft and pliable so it can squeeze in tight. Road flares if possible, sources of fire, sources of light, sources of heat if you can manage it. Lots of stuff you can throw in a bug-out bag, and the choices are endless. But it all comes down to, what do you think you might need to do in order to prepare? But there's still so many people out there who don't think they need to do anything to prepare for the worst case possible scenario. Well, the worst case possible scenario has been looming over our head for years. And it's looming even closer today. And it's all about preparation, not about being afraid of everything that goes boo in the night, every little shadow in the dark. You know, like JFK said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Was that him? I believe it was, talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Letting the American people know that although the possibility is there, although it might seem pretty imminent, that the Cubans might launch ICBMs at America, possibly tipped with nuclear warheads, backed by Russian troops, with a threat of a full-scale invasion, potentially. He was trying to say that the thing to do is not to freak out, to show our defiance, to show that we are not afraid, to show that we are a strong people, and be prepared to do what is right, to do what is necessary. And that's not an excuse to invade foreign nations for no reason, or for no tangible reason other than political gain and to gain control of a long-lost artifact. You know? That's what I'm trying to say. All along the way I've been saying it, and I'm sure all of you got the picture by now, but even if it's not so clear, you know, don't be afraid. You know, it's okay to have fear, but don't let that fear rule you or determine your decisions. For example, I am joining the Army Reserves at this point, but probably going to go active duty if and when the chance presents itself. Because the military life is the life for me. Can't escape it. And I want to do the right thing in the right place at something I'm good at. You know? And yes, I do have that little corner of me is afraid of what might potentially occur. That I end up doing the right thing and it pisses off some people up above and they say, oh, this guy might be a traitor. Let's just make sure that we have no doubts and stick him in a dark hole in Gitmo or somewhere. And torture him until his fucking asshole is inside out. Until he's bleeding out his dick. You know? Until he can't hear anything at all. He has no ears. His face is a wreck. Do whatever it takes to get him to break. That could be me. Who knows what the future may hold. Don't fear the future. Don't fear the past. Don't dwell on it. Remember it for what it is. Remember the truth of what happened. Because even though the victor writes the history books in whatever conflict arises, those of us who survive any given conflict, it falls on us to pass on down that truth. That's my overriding message to all of you all out there. This may well and truly be my last episode for a good long while. I hope not, because it really has been a pleasure to present all these topics to you, to have this intelligent dialogue, to exchange witty banter with all the trolls. I love it. I love the style. I love, you know, being out there for the world to see. This is me. This is what I believe in. This is what I know, and I want to share that knowledge with you. This is what I'm learning, and I want to share my viewpoint and have it criticized. I'm okay with that. I always have been, always will be. Good. If I ever get myself in a leadership position, I will welcome my subordinates when the time is right. You know, when we're chilling in the rear with the gear, to say, hey, boss, you think this is the right thing to do, or should we go about it another way? Or do you think your ideas are right, or do you think maybe this is how it really is? I welcome that. I really do, as a person. You as a Marine, soon to be also a soldier. That is what keeps us alive. The ability to have that argument, to have that dissent. Regardless of whether they tell us we're allowed to or not. We need to be free. Free from the bondage of chains and slavery. We need to secure those rights for ourselves and our future generations. You can see I'm throwing a lot of quotes at you here. But you know what? They said it far better than I ever could. And I hold true to their ideals. Good night, everybody. Godspeed. I hope to see you on the other side.